today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing great myself. So to get this started, you've come a long way since Hardcore Henry.
Mhm.
And in between the downtimes of your feature filmmaking
Mhm.
process, what do you think was the most important lesson that you've learned and that you've applied in this film here?
I got to work in a lot of scripts with a lot of amazing writers. Some of the movies might happen, some might not. But I was able to really understand what I need to focus on to make the sort of the movies that I really wanted, that I loved growing up, and understanding what really makes movies versus just doing the exciting, simple, surface level stuff. So the pauses were, I think every movie took 3 years to make. And that's longer than average. But at the same time, I was always shooting commercials back home and shooting music videos. So I was honing the craft and keeping the directing muscles going. Um, yeah, but altogether, I don't think I could have shot this before I did Nobody, because it was just, I think it's just, they're very logical steps, not just in terms of budgets, which would be the obvious thing, but just in terms of understanding what really is the ultimate goal and who I'm serving, who in the audience I'm trying to get this across. And um, I think that's it. Yeah. I need to understand. I need to understand when I wrap up the sentence to have a firm exclamation mark. So I'm like, yeah, I think it's pretty good. Yeah, it's pretty good.
I
Yeah.
totally get
Yep.
it. And I love that answer so much. It's also different in the sense that you're working with huge stars like John, Idris, and Priyanka. Did you find yourself initially intimidated by the talent that you had in your hands? And how did that sort of feeling change throughout the process of filming?
I think the day one was probably the most stressful day I had on set my entire life. And I came out of it and I called the writer. I was like, Josh, I don't know, but this was it was like, I knew what I was doing. The storyboards were there, the guys were great, lines are landing, everything's good. But like I was really stressed. He's like, listen, like the biggest names in the business who've been making movies for 50 years still say the first 3 days are terrifying. So it's okay to be a little stressed. I'm like, okay, great. And I breathed out. But in terms of, to really answer your question, the guys are so great, genuinely. John, Idris, and Pri, and Jack, and in fact, all of our incredible supporting cast. I got nothing but true, genuine support in what I was trying to do. And it was whatever you need, boss. It really was that. And I was like, great, I would have been prepped for anything. They could have been, all of them could have been complete assholes. We still would have made it work. But they made my life super easy, which I'm incredibly thankful for. And they would not just be like, oh, I think we're done. We're like, no, if there's a note. We'll get the note, however long it takes. And then we stay focused and get better and not just settle for good enough. Because this movie, you don't make a movie like this and settle on good enough.
Oh, yeah, I definitely love that answer. Was there anything that they taught you filmmaking-wise and vice versa?
Of course, I think every day on set you learn. It doesn't matter what you're shooting. It really doesn't matter. It could be a cat food commercial, you're going to learn. So with these guys who are, decades of, I think this is Priyanka's like 70th movie or somewhere around there. So, it's impossible. I think there's just no super specific thing I can come to my mind right now. But in terms of understanding, I think learning to work with multiple movie stars at the same time, which is a new experience for me, and how to focus your energy on making sure, because before, nobody, I had Bob. I had to focus on Bob.
Yeah.
And it's one thing to make sure one person is incredible and the rest are supporting, versus you have 3 people that need to be. Because I have this thing, I love sitting in the movies when there's a screening with the stars. I haven't seen it yet. And we played for them. I want them the same way Bob looked at me when I showed him the final cut of everything it was Corona. It was like middle of 2020 in LA. And we're all sitting there with masks, and Bob takes his masks off and looks at me. He's going, it's really good. And I love that. I had the same thing from Charlotte for Hardcore. And I'm kind of addicted to that feeling of making sure that my people who are helping me make this thing feel super rewarded at the end of the experience. So it was interesting to focus instead of 1 to make it go to 3 at a time.
I love that idea about focus that you have in mind for John, Idris, and Priyanka. And especially with the fact that you've got some pretty huge set pieces that you also play around with. Like that whole Tomato Town Festival at the start, and also Air Force One, and these huge car chases as well. So which one do you think was the hardest to coordinate? And what was the biggest difficulty that you had while filming that entire process?
I think the Tomatina Festival in the beginning was difficult just because of the amount of extras and the fact that we couldn't use real tomatoes for much of it because of what's happening, what tomatoes do. The acidity in the tomatoes would screw up any old, 17th century town square in Europe, and you don't want to do that. So it was a lot of, I think it was more difficult from managerial location, administrative thing rather than directing. Because directing, I have the storyboards. We just go and do that. It's the hardest part of the process for me, and the one where that is my true, I think, core of my job, is the script stage, and the storyboards. Because after that, with the right team, you just go and you execute. We always add improvisation. We're not just locked in just this and nothing else, because that's just foolish, because things will change and you want to embrace new things and new ideas that come to you. But I think just the execution of getting, 600 extras, having a complicated action scene that is also the beginning of the movie, you can't go wrong, because if you lose the people, if you don't catch the people in the first 5 minutes, what are you doing? No, you don't shoot again. You sit there and people would be like, I'm spending my time, and I'm like, there's a thing about confusion, where it's very good, where it is, if the audience is confused, it's only because you want them to be confused. And there's elements that work in certain genres, certain moments, but otherwise you want to make sure you got them and they understand and they're moving along and feeling what you want them to feel.
I love that answer. And to connect it to another question that I also have, which sequence would you say was harder to film? The Air Force One escape sequence, the bus fight from Nobody, or the chase scene from Hardcore Henry?
Chasing Hardcore Henry, the bus fight for Nobody, and
the Air Force One escape.
I think it probably the beast sequence in this movie, because the bus fight in Nobody is in closed space. It was difficult, but we had 4 days. Bob was very good. We were just hyper focused, and he knew everything, and we just executed. It wasn't much improvisation there. Hardcore, at this point, we were like on day 80 of the shoot, and we had an incredible team, and it was just like, let's go. The beast chase in Heads of State was complicated because we shot it because of the actor strike. We had to shoot the exteriors of the cars in the port in Trieste in Italy. Then we had the sound stages in London, sound stages in the south of France, and to combine that all, and ultimately, there's a lot of crazy stuff that happens outside with the cars and the shootings, all the stunts, and the beautiful locations. But the interior, John is a big guy, and to have John fight with Wade Briggs, who plays the chef, fight in that tight space with Priyanka, that was just, take one. Wade, who is a very capable actor, who also has a great stunt abilities. Just because of the tight space, something goes wrong, he clocks John right in the face, first take. And then it was lovely, because for the rest of the shoot, it was 4 days in that really cramped space with the camera. We'd all be like, all right, let's go again. Oh, wait, let's make sure we don't punch Mr. Cena. And Wade would always get very flustered, and he did an incredible job. Yeah. But that was just tight because, elevator fights, bus fights, tight spaces, it's work. You got to be very careful not to hurt anybody while still making sure the audience like, ooh. So, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And I just got to say, I wish that we got you back for Nobody too, because, ugh.
I think, have you seen it?
I've seen the trailers, but
I believe Timo. I've talked to him about it. I've talked to Bob. I talked to everybody. It was the timing didn't work out. I think we're in good hands, and I look forward to August 16th is coming out. So I'm there opening day. They're like, you want to fly out for them? I'm like, no, I want to go with the audience, and I'm happy that the people that I made a great movie with get a chance to continue in the studios giving them. So, last thing I'll say, if Nobody is the kind of film that allows directors who've never made a film in America, such as myself, such as Timo, to be their first debut. That's a franchise, and Nobody 3 will be with another fantastic new foreign director. Why not?
Yeah. I didn't know that, but I gotta say, Ilya, thank you so much again.
Thank you.